All right, hello, welcome to another episode of Behind the Brand, where we bring you inspired stories from entrepreneurs and CEOs who are making a significant impact in the world of business and beyond. In this show, we not only dive deep into their careers, journeys, and how they help business thrive, but we also explore the human side of their success, covering the core areas that makes us who we are: body, being, balance, and business. So sit back and get ready for an insightful conversation. Today, I'm thrilled to have Ranger with us. He is a holistic, successful coach who embarked on an incredible journey. He walked from South Carolina to California in 2024. He specializes in guiding entrepreneurs and nonprofit leaders. Ranger is dedicated to helping those who strive to make a positive impact in their communities. He is on a mission to empower individuals to embrace their true selves and live boldly. With years of coaching experience and a passion for personal development, Ranger has created a framework that blends resilience, accountability, and strategic action to unlock potential. From stories of the road to powerful lessons in leadership and growth, Ranger is here to inspire and share insights that can help anyone take the first step towards success. Welcome to the show, Ranger. I am so excited to have you here. And let's start with your journey. How did you first get into the coaching that you're doing? Was this always basically the career that you wanted? Do we want to hear your story, how you started?
Yeah, for sure. Well, Maya, thank you so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. And in terms of the coaching journey, that started during COVID. So it wasn't my original plan by any means to be a coach or be a life coach or business coach or anything. I'll actually take a step back from COVID. Growing up, I wanted to be a veterinarian. So I wanted to specialize. Well, originally I wanted to specialize in feline medicine. And then I switched over to large animal, specifically into, ruminant systems like sheep and goats and cattle. And I went to UC Davis, which is the number one vet school for that. Well, it's the number one vet school. So it's the number one school for the program I wanted to go into. And after a couple of quarters, I realized that the major of animal science is way more science than animal. And my grades weren't that great. I almost failed out a couple times during my first year. And at the very beginning of my sophomore year, I had to have that hard discussion with one of my advisors that, maybe this isn't the career for me if I can't really get through the undergrad work. Even if I were to get into vet school, it would just be harder and it may not be what I actually want to do. So that was really something that, put a huge stake in my spokes of life, kind of threw me off the bike there. And I ended up switching my major to managerial economics and, had my own mental health struggles and weights and all these other things throughout college. Thankfully, I was a part of a professional fraternity that was able to kind of help me, have that community and mentorship to get through those 3 or 4 years that I was there. But that's kind of just the background of leading into COVID. So I graduated in December of 2019. So 3, 4 months right before COVID started. And the jobs that I had applied for all fell through. Event directing. I was applying for a job with the Almond Board of California to be like their research liaison. So that would require a lot of meetings, a lot of presentations, a lot of group work. So once COVID hit, all of those plans got washed out the window. So it's kind of like, hey, this thing that I wanted for 18 years was no longer a thing. And then the thing that I was kind of working towards for the next 3 or 4 was kind of again wiped away from me. So what was it? During 2020, 2021, I went through 7 or 8 different jobs, part-time, full-time. Yeah, it was rough. My first job was working at a pet store doing reptile and amphibian sales. So lizards, snakes, spiders, frogs, etc. And then I got a job doing door-to-door sales, which I'm not sure how familiar you are with California, but the wildfire season is during the summer. And that mixed with COVID, doing door-to-door sales was not the best. Nobody was happy to see you, even more so. But to kind of wrap up the story, I ended up working at a vineyard where I met a gentleman that was a life coach. And like I said, that was my sixth or seventh job during that time. So he was like, hey, tell me about your, who are you? What do you want to do in your life? And I mentioned that I was the president of a reptile sanctuary and rescue in Sacramento, the capital of California. And he put me in contact with one of his colleagues that was also going through the same program that he was in. And she was an animal trainer by trade, by education and career, but she was doing this as like a passion project and something that she really wanted to get into. So I met with her. We talked mostly about the animals, but I kind of asked her a few questions about life coaching and what the whole coaching thing was all about. And she said, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was along the lines of, if you feel lost, we help you find clarity. If you're not sure where to go, we help you figure it out, right? Like really figuring out who you are and what's important to you. So I ended up hiring her. I worked with her for about 9 months. And by the very end of it, or I think by the end of our second session, so about 6 months in, I was like, Joss, like you've really helped me figure out why these past jobs didn't resonate with me, why I didn't like them, what I did like about them. And I tried, 5 or 6 different side hustles during that time, trying to figure out what I wanted to do business-wise. And I was like, I just wish that I could do something. Like, I think the thing that's missing is that level of impact that you've had on my life, I want to have on the lives of others. I want to work with people one-on-one or in these group settings to help them find clarity. And she said, well, it sounds like you want to be a coach. And I was like, oh, well, yeah, based off of that description, duh. So I ended up doing a few online certifications, got my feet wet in a little bit, and then I did a year-long training program in Sacramento where I learned all the fundamentals of being a coach, got my first clients, and really was just able to dive into the world of coaching. So that's the coaching side of how I landed from, post-grad to actually starting my business and be running it for a few years now.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Such a journey.
Yeah, for sure.
How did you even start? Like, why did you go to veterinary? What did you want to do? Like, since childhood, like kind of like what was the reasoning to go for that journey?
Yeah. Well, that was the original goal, right? That was the reason I always had animals growing up. I mean, right now I have a picture up on my little dash of me with one of my childhood cats, Cleo. And I just always loved them. I really love the idea of being a voice for the voiceless. They can't communicate. They can't tell you where it hurts. So I always thought it was so interesting to be able to kind of take a stand for a creature that can't really take a stand for themselves. And even though I couldn't be a veterinarian because, it's hard work, it's a lot of debt, it's a lot of schooling. I know that veterinarians also have really bad mental health in terms of, their career. Like it's not all just like cats and dogs, right? Or puppies and kittens, right? It's life and death constantly all the time. So, I am thankful that I was able to get involved in a few different rescues and kind of, I have my own rescue cat that I found while I was walking across the country, which I'm sure we'll get into later. But really just being able to, find ways to also still scratch that part of my brain, I think is also very, very nice.
Do you feel like whatever you got from school, from college, from the veterinary, is it helping you now? Or do you feel like it's just totally like separate directions from like 360 kind of type of thing?
Well, now that you mention it, the first thing that popped in my mind is I did take a few I did get the chance to take some animal science courses before I switched to business and economics. And I would think that I think the biggest thing there, even, this is kind of a silly comparison, I think, but it might make sense. A lot of animal behavior and the way that you kind of like read an animal is based off of body language. Like you can see these small shifts. Their ears are tilted back, their eyes dilate, they kind of take a different stance, their tail's up or down. Like you really have to pay attention to body language with animals. And I mean, I have I mean, in my garage, I have spiders and snakes and lizards. So I very different from cats and dogs, right? Um, but I think that in terms of paying attention to those very small intricacies, even with horses or cattle or sheep, that is something that I think is very prevalent in coaching. Because I feel like, what isn't it, like 70% of communication is body language. So I think just being kind of in tune with that, being able to kind of see what's going on without being able to, I don't know, have them tell you, I think is useful in terms of coaching because you can pick out these small tone changes. You can kind of see somebody shift back in their seat, or they kind of lean forward, or they make a little bit of a face or something very small, right? So I would think that that's kind of something that I take into my coaching, which is a really good question. I might steal that for one of my podcast episodes. That's interesting.
No, it's a good because
Yeah.
you telling me it, and I was like, well, it's such a different path. But once you mention
Hmm.
it, I'm like, that's so true because um, you learn how you having the skills of learning how to read an animal. Like that's
Hmm.
hard. Like
Yeah.
like it's the same as me. Like I have little kids, and
Hmm.
it's like me trying to um guess what they want.
Yeah.
Like little ones, they scream and you're like, okay, what does he want? And I feel like it could be something similar that you get to and then once you know that, then because for me, same thing. Like I think because I started went through my kids journey, now I understand people a little better. I don't judge them as fast. I try to kind of see the reasoning behind them, whatever they do. And I started to actually use my body language because it actually helps me to express my feelings. So I think that's amazing. I feel like that's a good point right there. Um, definitely.
Yeah, I love
um,
that. I think that's so interesting that it's like the how things kind of transpose and how you can kind of use the skills from different areas in whatever you're doing now, right? And it becomes so surface level that like until you ask that question, like I hadn't actually ever thought of that relationship. So I think that was a really great way to kind of call that out. Thank you.
yeah, and me as being in a business for over 10 years,
Hmm.
I really like looking at things. And what I found, it doesn't matter. Sometimes people ask me, what industries do you serve? I'm like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're a doctor. It doesn't matter if you work with animals, if you do sales. We run business the same way. Like accounting in terms of real estate, kind of different, but then it's all the same. We're all people. We all kind of like, and that's why, even though you had a different path, I feel like the whatever the skills you probably got from veterinary is probably helping you to being a good coach. And I feel like that's a big deal too, that determines who is able to coach somebody who's not. And it's you have to really be a person, a people's person,
Yeah.
to do a good coaching. um, what do you like to do? So now that you're doing coaching,
Hmm.
what's the best thing that you enjoy in your career?
I'd say that the biggest thing that comes to mind is probably centered around just having when you kind of hear those aha moments on the phone calls, when you kind of hear somebody like kind of like the line of question that you just did, right, about the connection, those kinds of moments are what I love. When you ask a question where somebody really goes, wow, like I never thought to even question that. Like I'm sure you've heard it before, but the quote goes something like, we question all of our beliefs except for the beliefs we truly believe in and those we never think to question. Like being able to call out those beliefs or those behaviors or like those things that are kind of below the surface that people are doing, and kind of saying, hey, here, like shining a light on it. Like, have you ever noticed that you say this constantly or that you're doing this? And a lot of times people don't. And then they get to really decide, does this work for me? Does this not work for me? I think really just seeing those real behavior and belief shifts are what I really enjoy about coaching, because those are the things that help me the most.
Yeah, that's true. Because I've been learning about coaching as well,
Hmm.
and I've a good point that I've learned is coaching is all about, it's not, nobody cares about your advice.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. It's like when
Hmm.
people ask, they already know what they want to do, but a lot of times they're uncertain. And it's
Hmm.
like a good coach knows what questions to ask. And to
Yeah.
me, that like stuck so much, because I wanted to like share ideas or help everybody and tell them what to do. And they're like, no, that's not coaching.
Hmm.
Coaching is like talking to someone and knowing what to ask,
Yeah.
and like if you or guiding them to the right direction. And if you ask them something that makes them think, that's a successful coaching session.
Exactly. And that's what I love the most too, was that, I don't have to be the expert in, like you're kind of saying earlier, like the medical field or real estate or investing or, all these different things, because a lot of it is that base level of asking the questions. Kind of, I call it like holding the mirror. Like the focus isn't on me as the coach. The focus is on you as the client. If I ever let my own drift or my own worldview or my beliefs or what I think the person should do fall into the call, like you were saying, that's not what it's for. It's about letting them make the decisions, helping them feel sure about it so that they can actually be empowered to make the decisions that'll move them forward. So I just wanted to reiterate what you were saying, because it's spot on.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, now that we talked about your journey and what you did, now I
Hmm.
want to point and talk about the first aspect of the most important, I believe, is
Hmm.
body.
Hmm.
Um, and I have my own story, how I worked, and what kind
Yeah.
of made me focus on my health. Um, Basically, as coaches, we sit so much on the computer, and I feel at times like so drained and tired. I have to go out, make sure I work out, things like that.
Hmm.
Do you feel the same? Do you feel like computers or sitting has any kind of effect on you? If
Hmm.
yes, what do you do to take care of yourself? What do you do to kind of make sure
Yeah.
it's like you're not falling apart and keep going and motivated every day?
Yeah. So to kind of answer your question in a roundabout way, so before I got into coaching, and even one of the jobs I had before this, I worked at the a county ag commissioner's office. So about 50% of the time I was at my desk writing reports. The other half I was out in the field. But a lot of the jobs that I had before that were always on my feet, always moving. I worked on farms, ranches, bars, restaurants, right? So you're constantly on your feet moving. So personally, I don't think I've had any ill effects from sitting constantly, just because I have always been so proactive and always moving. I do want to share, because when I was in high school, I was a varsity athlete, small town, so everybody basically was. But I was super active. And then once I got to college, I kind of went through, I don't know, like I guess or like my own mental health issues, and I ended up gaining a whole bunch of weight. So at my peak, I was about 300 pounds. I never saw it on the scale, but I hit about 299. So I'm sure if I had checked it a few hours before or after, I would have hit the 300, right? And right around that time, I was like, man, something needs to change. I need to do something different. So I ordered a Spider-Man workout shirt off of Amazon. 2 days later, got it. And then I started doing night runs. So I would leave my room at 2 or 3 in the morning and hobble my way out of the fraternity house I was in and run as much as I could. And after a few months, I lost like 10, 15 pounds. I cut out all the crap I was eating. So, Mountain Dew and a bunch of fast food. I was really trying to like eat better, not perfect, but better. And after I graduated, I could never get into the swing of an actual workout routine. I try to be like, I'm going to go running 3 times a week, or I'm going to go to the gym once a week, or I'll start small, or I'll go every day, right? But nothing really stuck. And it was until I started working with my coach, Jocelyn, that I really got focused on my why, right? I think that's really the biggest thing is I think, to answer your question of like, how do you stay motivated? How do you maintain like your level of working out? And I'll explain what I do now. I think really getting honed in on a why, and not just one, but I really like to have kind of like a spider web of whys. Like one of them is I want to feel confident in my body. And then another one is I want to live a long time. My grandfather passed away from Alzheimer's in 2020. And my doctor told me that, it's not really something you can necessarily prevent. But if you move and you learn and you constantly keep your mind active, it reduces your chances. So it's like, okay, here's this, prevent me from getting this, and like kind of mixing up all these different reasons. That was what helped me do a program called 75 Hard, which is just 75 days of, you work out twice a day, you read, you write, you drink water, take a progress photo, etc. And that was the first time in my life that I ever maintained a actual workout schedule, like self-disciplined. Was because I had the specific program. I had a strong why, and I was able to keep myself going on it. So to answer your question of like, other than the big adventure that I did, my walk, right now I'm doing 75 hard again, where I'm doing push-ups and walking and running. And, I'm doing a lot of things every single day. And for me, that's just like, not only is it good for my body to work out and maintain muscle and cardio, but I feel great after I work out. Like what is it? I don't necessarily like working out, but I like having worked out, right? Like the process of making time, the process of doing it isn't my favorite necessarily, but that feeling after is like, man, I did this thing. Like this morning, I think I did it like 6 to 7 a.m. And I was able to like get up from my last set of push-ups and be like, wow, I think I've just done more than most people have done. Like they're not even out of bed yet, right? So I just think it's like that aspect on the mental and physical side. But I've said a lot of things. What's next?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Do you feel like difference when you don't work out versus when you do?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely feel it. Like I said, I think I feel a lot more on the mental side, because when I'm off program, when I'm not doing 75 hard, or I'm not doing one of the other phases of the program, um, it might just, like, again, it might be placebo. It might be just because I'm thinking about it, but I do feel more tired. I feel more groggy. When I wake up first thing in the morning and I go for a walk, or I do yoga or push-ups, like it gets the blood flowing and I feel actually more awake. So I think that's when like the great benefits of that is getting that blood flowing, doing something so that you're not just going from a cold wake up, walking to the kitchen, grabbing your coffee and water, walking to your desk and being tired while you're starting your day. So I think that's probably one of the biggest things, is it wakes you up and it gets you moving.
Yeah, no. And in terms of placebo, I don't know if that's really, because whoever I talk with, same thing, and we do feel the difference when we don't work out, and you just feel like you don't want to do anything. It's just that weird draining feeling. And then when you walk outside, you work out or do something, it's a totally different feeling. And for me, it's like the nature. I go out, it's like you get such different ideas too. You get like a million of ideas how you can do stuff when you go, like you work out or to a walk. So I think it's definitely has a big effect on people.
No, for sure. So it's good to hear that other people experience that too, because I'm always like, well, that's not really my area of expertise, like of the like the phys like I'm not like a what is it, a like a personal trainer, so I'm sure that's a thing, but it's just like very anecdotal. So I'm like, I don't know if this is real. I feel it, so it's real to me.
Yeah, no, for sure. And um I think, yeah, keep doing what you're
Hmm.
doing. I feel like your body will definitely thank
Yeah.
you. All right. So the next point that we're going to talk about is being.
Hmm.
Basically, that it's a sense of purpose. And basically, what do you do, or how do you stay connected? Do you have a purpose? Like, what's kind of your purpose of life? And how do you,
Hmm.
whatever you're doing, how does that connects to that? If you have anything basically to share in
Yeah.
that point.
No, for sure. And I think the whole idea of like purpose and your life's purpose is so interesting, right? Because I feel like it's this huge question that everybody asks, like, what's the meaning of life? What's the purpose behind it? And that was something that I kind of struggled with. Like, do I need to figure out the purpose of life? Do I need to figure out the purpose of my life? How can you kind of tie up all whatever 100 years of your life into one statement? And it was actually while I was walking across the country, I had, what was it? I had just passed from Georgia into Alabama, and it was a rainy day, kind of like it is right now where I am, which is kind of interesting. Um, but I was listening to a podcast from Skool. He's like a businessman's kind of coach, and he was talking about his life's purpose, which is to serve humanity. Just two words, very clear, very concise. And for me, I was just like, oh my gosh, that ties in everything that I've been doing, right? From the, drive to be a veterinarian to the work that I did in college. I was the philanthropy chair of my fraternity. So I focused a lot on food waste, food insecurity, and distribution. I worked in, animal rescues. I did all these different things that were serving people, animals, and the environment. And I kind of feel like that is very much tied up into the idea of humanity. So I was like, that's fantastic. Like, I love the whole idea, like having that as like the cornerstone, the center of everything that I do. So I've kind of taken that into my coaching practice. One of my taglines is I help people, because I really want to be able to inspire, like, the entrepreneurs, the nonprofit leaders, the community members to make a change, to help others and kind of expand that ripple effect. My walk across the country, that was to share stories of people and impact that are making a difference where they're at. So I really feel like that is the cornerstone for my life, and something that I invite others to kind of, take a look at and see how it works for them. Because I really feel like that's one of those, what is it, purpose statements that can be applied in, like we were saying earlier, like any demographic, any like industry. Because I feel like no matter where you are, for business or nonprofits, the corner of that should be to serve those around you.
Yeah, for sure. And I've talked with other people as well, where recently I talked to this one marketer, and he was saying that he had a business that earned him a lot of money, and he said he was not really happy in like doing the work. She's like, I gave up on it and I started doing something else. And I feel like for so many people,
Mm-hmm.
the feeling of purpose and like the feeling of, oh, I'm actually doing something good
Mm-hmm.
is so much greater than the money itself.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a big, going back to what you're doing, you're getting benefits of, helping people and actually
Mm-hmm.
earning money from that.
Yeah.
So, all right. So next one is the we're talking about is balance. And my question to you: do you have kids? Are you married? Or
Yeah. So I'm engaged. We don't have kids. We're not married just yet. We're in the process of planning the wedding. So going to venues and trying to figure out what we want, and kind of having those like hard discussions of what it actually means to be married. So we're kind of in that phase right now. I mean, we've been together for, I think, what, 6.5 years or so. So it's pretty much set that we're gonna do it and be fine, right? And in terms of like kids, I mean, the only thing that we have the cat, we have the animals, so that's kind of like the things that we take care of. I mean, very different, of course, from actual human children. But in terms of that, that's kind of what the home life looks like, is us and the critters. Um,
how
then
do
it's
you
like,
how do
oh,
you
go ahead.
balance? Do you have what do you do besides work?
Hmm.
Do you have a hard time balancing it all, or you're just kind of, I mean, it is what it is? Or
Yeah.
I guess for sometimes when people have other responsibilities, it might be harder.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah. So speaking from my own situation, In terms of work-life balance, I don't think it's necessarily a dichotomy, whereas either you're balanced or you're unbalanced. It's more so of a spectrum to be managed, right? So for me, I do really feel like, my work, my coaching, my podcast, my everything, like that is part of my life. There's not really that differentiation. So what I do try to do is set times during the night where I'm like, okay, I'm going to get everything done by this time. After that, no more. Just because I do want to focus on making sure that my fiance is getting the time and attention, that we're able to do things together still, right? Like, I don't want to just sit there all day, every day doing my business stuff. But it's also hard because, like, I do enjoy it. Like, I do like making graphics. I do like learning things. I do like watching the videos, interacting with people on Skool or Facebook or all these other platforms. Um, but I do know that that does take away from, my fiance and I's quality time, right? So it's kind of being like, okay, at this time, like, this is what I'm doing, this is what's going on, but we also need to like pen in that time for each other. So I think it's more so about having those agreements ahead of time. Like with her, I kind of try to tell her my week schedule ahead of time, or as things comes up, let her know what's going on so that, we can kind of make plans in that regard. But the other time is just being able to say, hey, I'm done at this time. That's it. And then kind of move forward from there. I'm not going to say I'm perfect at it yet, but that's kind of what you're going towards, especially, I'm sure, as you know, as a business owner, things come up that need to be taken care of. So it's just kind of controlling what you can and being open to getting through the things that you can't in a quickly, efficient, effective manner.
Well, even working from home, you work from home, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you have like set hours that you're like, okay, I'm working from this hour to this hour, and then have work and then live? Do you do something like that, or it's kind of like?
Not yet. Since I'm kind of in that building phase from getting back from my walk, I do kind of have a weird schedule. It's kind of, wake up as early as possible, around 6 to 7-ish. Some nights I have networking events that I go to. So like tomorrow during the day, I have a lunch networking event. And then that night I have a coaching call with one of my paying clients. So it's kind of like they're not very consistent on when things are happening. So it's hard to kind of have that I'm only working from this time to this time. Like last week, I think I went to 3 evening networking events, Monday through Friday. So it was kind of hard to be like, I'm going to be done at 6 when I don't get back home until 8 or 9 o'clock at night. But I do want to work towards having a, what is it, like Wednesday nights? That's couple time. Like that is when we're focusing on the wedding planning. That's when we're focusing on each other. Doing something like that once things kind of slow down and I get a better foothold in the new area that I just moved into with her.
Okay, got it. Yeah, no, that's good. And I think as you go forward, how long have you been doing the business, or when did you start the coaching? How long ago?
So I started coaching about 3 years ago, but I got back from my walk. What was it? August 31st. So September 1st. So this is the first time that I've been, well, I guess I started being full-time coach in March when I quit my job to walk across the country. But actually being able to do business things didn't start until September. So September, October, November. So I'm only about 3 months into full 100% self-employment working on the business.
You want to share your journey,
Yeah.
your walk journey? We kind of went through it in the body, but I want to go back to it and see really like what it was like, how long it took you, and kind of what reflection you have after.
Yeah. So I learned about walking across the country in 2019, kind of close to the time when I graduated, but beginning of the year. There's a gentleman named Mike Posner that walked across the U.S. in 2019. He's a singer, songwriter. He did I Took a Pill in Ibiza, Cooler Than Me, and a few other ones. He also wrote songs for Maroon 5, Justin Bieber, and a few other artists. So he was pretty popular in like the early 2010s or so. But he did a walk in 2019. And when I saw that, I was like, wow, that's neat. How cool, how inspiring. Like, I wish I could do something like that. And then I kind of spiraled and I was like, well, but I'm not rich. I'm not famous. I don't have these resources. I'm not that cool. Right. So I kind of was just like, wow, that's amazing. And then I kind of just came with all these reasons as to why I couldn't do it. So it kind of got put on the back burner. I watched his journey. Eventually, he made it from the Atlantic Ocean on the East Coast to the Pacific on the West. Jumped in, made all the Facebook posts, all the Instagram stories, everything about it. And that was kind of the last time I thought about it. Up until the end of 2021, beginning of 2022 or so, I was at my mom's house. I'd moved in with her, and I was scrolling on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and eventually I came across a TikTok from this guy named Ranger Kielak, and he posted a story or a video about his walk. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, who's this guy who's this random guy, right? And I went to his page and I started scrolling through it. And then he had just finished and he posted a video of him doing the last mile with Mike Posner, the guy that had kind of inspired the whole thing for me. I was like, who the heck is this guy? So I started looking into him and I kind of just realized that he's just this normal dude from Kansas. He walked with Mike during Mike's walk for a little bit while he was passing through his state. And then he decided to do it about a year or a couple years later. And then I found a podcast episode that Andrew was on with this guy named Mark Dudek on a podcast called Mark's Walk Across America. So I listened to their episode together. I went through Mark's entire podcast. He did like a week by week, every 2 weeks or so podcast with his buddies from home. And I was kind of just like, this is just a normal dude from Ohio. And the reason that I hadn't decided to walk originally was because I felt like I was just a normal dude from California. Kind of see the relationship. So I started looking into it, and apparently a whole bunch of other people have walked across the country. Men, women, different ethnicities, races, religions. And I was like, I'm making all these excuses for myself as to why I can't do it. And I was listening to one of Mike's albums, and there's a line in one of the songs that goes, my reasons are excuses for not being who I know I am. And I started looking into Mike's story, and I realized that when he heard about walking across the country, he had very similar stories he was telling himself, that he didn't have time, that it wasn't right for him, that he couldn't do it. And he had to get past that sabotaging voice, that inner critic that was preventing him from doing the big, scary, amazing thing. So what was it? I got coaching on it for a few months. And in July of 2022, I messaged my fiance when we were still boyfriend, girlfriend. And I was like, hey, like, I actually want to walk across the country. I confirmed want to do it. I've kind of told her about it a little bit here and there. And she said, great. What's the first steps? And from that point, from July 2022 to March 10th, 2024, about a year and a half, I was working out. I ended up hiring a fitness coach. I was able to talk to one of my friends, a nutritionist, that helped me set up a whole diet plan. I saved up money, really focused on my why and my mission for the walk. And on March 10th, I took my first steps from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and started heading west. So that's kind of the beginning part of, prepping and the motivation and inspiration for the walk.
Oh wow. How long would you be walking, like, each day?
Mm-hmm.
Did you have like a specific time frame, or you just
Yeah.
walk as you walk?
Yeah. So I did have a specific date I wanted to end by for sure, which was October 5th, 2024. I wanted to end on that date because I think it's the weekend before my birthday, October 9th. So I was like, I don't want to be walking on my birthday. I want to be back. Like, I don't want to be out for this long. So that gave me about 6.5, 7 months or so, or about 7 months. And in terms of how long I would walk every day, the first day that I went, Julie was still there. She flew out with me, and she was kind of, she had the rental car. So she would stop every couple hours, check on me, make sure I was doing okay. And that day I was able to get about 22 miles in. So 22 miles in a day. So that was kind of my base for the first month or so. was, okay, I know I can do about 20 to 25 miles. I didn't start walking until about an hour or so after the sun rose. I stopped a few hours before sunset. That gives me a few hours to kind of like extrapolate and be like, okay, I could probably get up to about 30 miles right now, right? So what I would do is I had something called the lily pad approach. And that was kind of inspired by, before I started the walk, I was talking to one of my old coworkers. I was like, it's overwhelming. It's hard to make a plan because it feels like I'm a frog that is on one side of the pond and needs to make a big old leap to the other side. But you can't jump from one side of the pond to the other. And she said something along the lines of, do you have to do it in one leap? Is that the best way to look at it? And that night I went home, and what I did was I cut my walk from one line across the country into a bunch of smaller lines, right? So instead of being like, okay, so from Myrtle Beach to Los Angeles, it was this town in South Carolina to this town in South Carolina to this next town to the next state. And then eventually I was able to make the leaps a little bit bigger from state line to state line, and then from Texas to California. So I got better at making the leaps bigger. So it was kind of just like, okay, this is where I think the next place I can set up a tent is. This is the next campground. This is the next hotel. I was able to find a host family over here. So that was kind of how I decided. And in terms of what I did every day, it was anywhere on average, probably between about 20 to 30 miles a day. There were 2 days where I did a 39-mile day and a 40-mile day. So those hurt a lot. I would not recommend, but it's what needed to be done so that I could actually, get through those spaces where I needed to without extra help or needing another hotel or another host. So probably about 25 to 32 or so was the average.
Did you do it by yourself or you had somebody
Mhm.
joining you?
So it was a solo trip. All I had was my backpack and my carts, and just my shoes, I guess. But I had other gear. I had tents and everything. But no, I didn't have anybody walk with me. Two friends of mine did join me in California. One of them is another coach. She's a dynamic aging coach named Joan Virginia Allen. She's 86 years old and walked with me for, I think, 7 miles in Los Angeles. And then one of my buddies from college, Trevor, he walked with me, I think, 9 miles my very last day. And they were the only two that actually did any mileage with me on the walk. So the rest of it, the other 2,642 miles, were all by myself.
Yeah, got it.
Mhm.
What is your reflection of all of the walk?
Yeah.
Do you feel like when you thought about it before starting, how do you feel after it?
Yeah. Well, I think that a lot of things were solidified during the walk. I did a lot of thinking. I had a lot of time to myself, more than most people will probably ever have for themselves. And I think that the biggest thing that I took away from the walk, and it was one of my slogans for the walk, one of the things that I started saying on every post, was there are good people out there. I think that I had like such great kindness shown to me throughout the entire journey. I had a couple like weird moments with people where it wasn't like I was in danger, but it was just like interesting. But 99.9% of the people that talked to me or stopped me, they gave me donations, food, water, money, gave me advice about the roads ahead, offered to shuttle me, drop off my gear, pick it up, move it around, whatever. So I thought all of that was extremely incredible and helpful, and definitely makes up for the couple weird things that happened. But again, it was just like, I'm not really sure what to say to you right now, but I'm going to keep going this way. Um, but yeah, just seeing communities come together, being able to see all the different nonprofits and businesses that are out there really making a difference and helping people. I think that was the thing that really solidified in my mind that as a civilization, as a population, like we are doing way better than we think we are. And if you don't think so, then you have the power to get up, get off the couch, and go do something about it. That there are other people that can help you make your movement, that can help you, I don't know, create the reality that you want to live in, right? I think that's probably the biggest thing and takeaway from the walk.
It's true, and it's really interesting to see in it, basically, how take nutrition,
Hmm.
where we see a movement now in more of organic, and maybe 2 years ago, when nobody was talking about, well, nobody kind of cared, and now it's like you see everybody waking up, everybody starting to talk about it, like, and you start seeing the stores are now, it's simple, we had store, and it's not stores like organic stores, it's simple stores as Walmart. You see now they're selling organic. They're now, every day I come, I see more and more better foods options out there, which is, like you mentioned, it's actually amazing to see that people still have a say.
Yeah.
And we saw that, in our election, where people are,
Yeah.
so many people were against Republican, but we saw an election, it's like people
Hmm.
are actually can make a difference. Um,
Hmm.
so, so yeah, sometimes I
Yeah.
guess we get to see bad side, but when we actually talk with real people, the story is
Hmm.
actually different.
Yeah. And I think that's another interesting thing too, is interactions that you have in person are very different than the ones you have online. All of the mean comments that I got were from online articles, right? Or news stations or this or that. So it's really interesting when people see you in person, either they're so caught up in their own world that they don't even notice. They want to talk to you. People want that human interaction, right? Like that's something that people are starved for. And I have a story on a couple instances where that was interesting if you're interested in hearing it. But I think when people kind of have that mask or that layer behind them on the screen, it makes them feel like they can be the worst version of themselves and not have any punishment, right? Um, I think the interesting thing on the other side also of online is people kind of find themselves in these echo chambers where they think everybody agrees with them or they think that everything is one way because they're in the communities and the algorithm is showing them things that just reinforce what they want to hear. So they kind of get blind to what is actually happening in the world. And I've noticed that with my own For You page and my own feed on social media is if I interact with negativity, I get more negativity. If I interact with positivity, I get more of that. Whatever I interact with is what I get more of. So it's very much like what you put into the world is what you receive. So I thought that was also an interesting noticing during the walk.
Yeah, the social media aspect, that's so interesting. I noticed that
Hmm.
too, when you it's like, it kind of, you think like it's kind of like reading your mind. So it's
Yeah.
actually giving you it's kind of feeding you, but I feel like it's more of like algorithm where it kind of watches your behavior, and then
Hmm.
obviously it wants you to be there, so it kind of gives you, whatever you're looking for.
Hmm.
So that's a really interesting aspect right there.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, all right. Well, let's hit the last point, which is business.
Hmm.
And we talked a little bit about how you started, what you do, and now just some questions for you in regarding your business and how you
Hmm.
run things. I know you haven't done much in doing business coaching so far,
Hmm.
but if you can reflect, what are some big lessons that you learned throughout your career that kind
Yeah.
of shaped the way you do business? And I know you talked a little bit on that, but if you have something else to share on that.
Yeah. Well, I've been doing a lot of work going through my testimonials and my reviews and kind of seeing similarities in terms of the people that I have worked with. And I would really say that, again, kind of spanning career, like I've worked with teachers and lawyers, nurses, trying to remember other coaches, hospitality sales, like all these different careers, right? Is that all of them are connected through them being a person, right? So what I typically say for myself is I'm a business coach that focuses on the person behind the mission, because everything that's going on up here in your head is going to affect what you put into the world, what you create, how you take in information, not just what you're putting out, but how you see what you're taking in. So I think that being able to work with people in that regard and figure out, again, the stories that they're making up, the worldview that they are looking at the world through, that lens, being able to see that across so many different people, seeing those similarities of, like, self-sabotaging beliefs or patterns, not having a clear why, not being focused on the goal, being distracted. Like, those are things that come up for so many different people, especially when, big life changes are coming, like, what is it, like divorces or marriages, a kid being born, a child moving out of the house, right? Like, these are all things that I've coached people around or through. So it's just always interesting to kind of see how people are so similar. So, like, when I actually read like psychology or sales or different books, it's like now I finally have something to kind of like have a better understanding of what people are going through and what they're seeing. So I think that that's been very, very interesting in terms of the breadth and just span of people that I've worked with so far. Does that kind of answer your question?
It does, yeah.
Okay.
And again, like you mentioned, that it's you learn that everybody is like similar,
Hmm.
and sometimes we think it's common sense, and
Yeah.
then we start talking with people, and they need our help. They don't know what we know.
Hmm.
So definitely. Well, what so when before or now, reflecting back to when you just
Hmm.
started, is there something that you wish you knew that you know now?
Yeah, I would say that I knew it from the beginning that I wanted to have a very specific why and a target avatar. Like, who am I actually looking to help? I feel like a lot of coaches kind of start off on the realm of, I'll help anybody with anything. Like, I have this skill set that can be used in so many different industries and so many different people, but unless you are able to communicate that message effectively and clearly, it's like the supermarket effect, where if you stand on a counter and you say, I help anyone with anything, like, no one's going to talk to you. But if you say, I help um 30-year-old single dads optimize their dating profile so that they can get married and find a great stepmom for their kids, right? Like, that's so much more clear and specific, and you're going to actually attract people that want your help and that expertise. So it's kind of being like, who do you want to help? Why do you want to help them? And, like, how does that benefit your world, your, like, the world that you want to create? I think that has to tie a lot more into what is your overall vision for the world, and how does your specific business, your business's mission, tie into that. So I think that that's something that I wish I had more clarity on. I knew it was important when I started. It just took me so long to get clarity on it until I was able to work with a few different people and, again, start nailing down those similarities. So that's probably what I would say is the biggest thing that I wish I knew sooner rather than later.
Well, it's true. And going back, I hear it all the time. You gotta pick a niche. You gotta
Hmm.
know who you work with, who's your target audience. But like you're saying, you wish you knew that earlier. Some like I'm in the same process,
Hmm.
but I feel like it's so hard to know that
Yeah.
before you, like sometimes maybe some people feel like that's what's keeping them from actually moving on, is because like, oh, I don't know what to work with. And I feel like the most important thing is to start,
Hmm.
to get out there. And like you said, maybe to get out there and scream, oh, I work with
Yeah.
everybody, help everybody, and kind of see who is like coming to you, and
Hmm.
kind of test, okay, and see, okay, I don't like working with him, but I actually like working with them. um
Yeah.
I feel like, well, market and research too. It's because you never know who you want to work with until you actually work with them.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I really want to echo that, take the first step thing, because when I started walking across the country, I didn't have like everything nailed down. And it wasn't until I started walking that I, was able to figure those things out as time went on. What works, what doesn't work. I read a few books, I listened to the podcast, watched a bunch of videos. And the way that I kind of describe it is it's like growing a tomato plant. You can read all of the books, you can talk to the researchers, you can have a podcast about tomatoes, you can know inside and out. But until you actually get out into the garden, get on your, I don't know, like get on your knees and start actually planting the seeds and see how it grows, like you don't know how to actually do it. So I think that is something that is so important, is like just be brave enough to start, because then you'll be able to figure out what's going on, how to do it, what works, what doesn't work. I don't know. I feel like slow progress is better than no progress. So that's probably the biggest thing too, I would say.
Yeah, and I really think that sticks with me is don't just talk about it, don't just talk the talk, but actually walk the walk. Because that I so agree with you, because there's others. I mean, I'm like, I can share so much information, but if I don't do it, it's like there's so many different factors that can go into play. So what would be one advice that you would give to those business owners that are not just like trying to survive, but actually are trying to thrive in business? As a business coach, what would be kind of like one biggest advice you would give to business owners?
Yeah, the thing that comes to mind first, it's a lesson that I learned from my walk, was know your why and talk about it. Once I started getting clear on my why, my mission statement for the walk, and I started sharing that with people and content centered around that, that's when I started getting more followers. I got more donations. I got more people, interested in what I was doing. Being able to share that story, I think, is most important for a business owner. And that kind of goes in line with the whole idea of just show up. Show up authentically, show up online, in person, talk about what you do, and get people enrolled in the idea of what you're trying to create.
And currently, the people that you work with, the experience that you got from working with others, what do you feel like separates those business owners who are successful, especially long-term, and those that are not successful and those that are like failing?
Yeah, I think it's hard to say. I would probably say the thing that comes to mind first is the people that are most successful are the ones that are coachable. They're able to look at what they're actually doing and really objectively say what's working, what isn't working. How can I be better? What can I do to take ownership of this situation? How can I not be the victim here, but instead kind of turn it into a more resourceful outlook? Like, things don't happen to me, but like things happen to me, but I can create opportunity from those things happening. I'd say that those are the people that are able to thrive and, I don't know, fulfill the most of their dreams.
Do you feel like you get more of good clients versus bad clients? How do you determine when you start working with someone, like, oh, I really want to work with this person, or no, I don't want to work with this person?
Yeah, so I think it's an interesting differentiator between the good and the bad. I would say that kind of putting those labels to the side, like putting a pin in those to the side, just the people that I have worked with, like they resonate with my messaging before we even hop on a call, right? Is I can tell that whether they're a referral, whether they found me on socials, whether I met them at an event or, an ad or whatever, right? Is they're already kind of primed to the idea of something isn't working in what I'm doing. Either I'm looking at things wrong, or everybody else around me is wrong, or the situation sucks. I don't know how else to put it, but it's either the internal or external. And I feel like when they come to coaching, typically they're already kind of primed to the idea that something needs to change. So I have found pretty solid success in terms of the people that reach out to me are already coachable and willing to learn how to be more coachable. So I feel like I could just say coachable, 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 but that's really what it would take, and that's what I've had the most success in personally, and what I've seen in others.
So basically, before they reach out to you, they see your message
Hmm.
and they're like, okay, this is exactly what I need.
Yeah,
Uh,
like this makes sense. This is what I'm looking for, or it's like another option. It's something that they haven't tried yet, so they're willing to be open and curious to the possibility of it working.
okay. What is your message?
Hmm.
Do you have like a one specific offer that you focus on, or do you have like different programs that you do?
Yeah, so I would really say that all of it is tied up in the idea of I help people, whether it's one on one, whether it's groups, whether it's my community. Like that is the focus of it. Is I am here to help people that want to make a difference in the world. Like I've worked with I don't know, businesses that, what was it? One of my sponsors for the walk, Cold Blooded Caffeine Company. The reason I work with them is because they donate a portion of their proceeds to the Rainforest Alliance. So instead of necessarily adding to deforestation issues, they're doing something about it. So that's just kind of an example of the types of people that I like interact with and that I want to be connected with. So in terms of my offer, it really just depends on what level of personalization people want. If they want that one-on-one experience, that's the one-on-one coaching. If they want to be in a group, we will set them up in a group with other individuals that are just like them. Same thing with the community online. It just really depends on what level of commitment, investment, and personalization that they want. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, yeah.
Perfect.
All right. So basically, to kind of close this whole interview, thank you so much for
Yeah.
uh, show letting me interview. It was just a really interesting topics. Um,
Hmm.
Basically, looking ahead in your career, in your goal, in your path, what are kind of the next big goals do you have, or
Hmm.
projects that you're working in, business, personal, kind of like in maybe like 5, 10 years, kind of where do you see yourself or your business?
Yeah. Gosh, I would say that the two things that come to mind the most are community and speaking. I really want to get my Skool community built up to be as valuable as possible to the people that I serve, because I want to also foster. Like I don't want, like I was saying earlier when I was working with my coach, I don't want to just be that, people work with me one time and they get something and then they leave, right? Like I want to be able to build a community, foster those relationships. So I would really love for within range, my coaching practice to be a community where people interact with each other, help one another, and everybody kind of works to make the world better. And with that regard, like I also want to get into speaking, start doing keynotes, start doing workshops and presentations everywhere, just so that I can kind of reach more and more people. I'm also working on a couple books. So just everything that I can do to kind of increase going from that one-to-one to small group all the way up to larger reach, larger impact, and again, help more people, help more people.
Oh, okay, so do you have a Skool community or you're currently working on that?
Yeah, I already have one.
Okay.
So it's am I able to mention that? Is that okay?
Oh yeah, no, that's
Oh,
okay.
okay. Yeah, so it's called Never Peak, the first steps. As of right now, it's free, so anybody can join. All I ask is you participate, interact with people, because that's really how you're going to get the most out of the community. So I have courses on there, workshops. Right now, we're doing weekly accountability calls. So every Wednesday, 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. People, different nonprofit leaders, business owners, et cetera. We all hop on the call and just interact, say what we're going to do this week, support each other, and wait until the next one. So there's a lot going on it right now, different challenges, prizes, awards. So there's also ways for you to work with me one-on-one for free in it by how much you interact in the group. So if anybody wants to check that out, it's just skool.com, skool.com/never dash peak.
Okay. Yeah, no, I love Skool.
Hmm.
It's been one of the greatest platform out there.
Hmm.
I've, especially for courses, there's different platforms that I've had experience with. But I love about Skool, they have an app. It's so easy
Hmm.
get in there, and just so easy to interact with people there as well.
Yeah.
And I feel like right now is a big, like right now is such a, it's so powerful to have the community. First focus helping people, and then obviously, if they feel like they need more help, reach out. So
Hmm. Definitely. Yeah. No, it's great on the community side as a member, but also on the community owner side in terms of the management system, how you can process payments, how you can do all these different things. So overall, I think the user interface is fantastic on both sides of the coin for sure.
how long have you been having, or when did you start the Skool group?
So I started Never Peak in, gosh, what was it? I think beginning of August. It was near the end of my walk when I was already in California, was when I was starting to, get programs up there, start getting my first few members. So since then, we're right around 20, 25 people. So the more people we get, the more valuable it is. So it's just been really interesting learning how to kind of get folks involved and enrolled into it. So
Yeah, no, keep doing it. I think it's going to be a
yeah.
good resource for a lot of people.
Hmm.
Uh, and so you mentioned, so now, how can people find you? I know
Yeah.
you mentioned Skool.
Hmm.
Is there any, like, do you have a website? Like, how do people find you?
Yeah. So the greatest touch point for me, if you want to actually interact with me one on one, is probably the best way going to be the Skool community. So it would probably go Skool and then Instagram and Facebook. Instagram is at within range underscore coaching. Facebook is within range life coaching. I have a YouTube channel, Ranger Kielak, Ranger Kielak, Kielak. And then I have my own podcast called Never Peak. Well, the Never Peak Project. And that's on Apple, Spotify, Pandora, pretty much every podcasting platform. But I'd probably say that it would go Skool, Facebook and Instagram, YouTube, and the podcast.
You want to share a little what you share in your
Mhm.
podcast? Kind of
Yeah,
like
for sure.
what's the focus? So yeah, so listeners,
Hmm.
if anybody interested, yeah, so they know, okay, this is exactly what I'm looking for, and they could go check it out.
Yeah, so it's a personal development and business podcast. And really, my goal there is to share lessons that I learned on my walk across the country, in business, college, pretty much just everything throughout my life, for them to expand their reach and their impact. Really, the whole idea of never peak and the never peak mentality is to kind of take a stab at that traditional peak mentality where people will say things like, oh, I peaked in high school, I peaked in college. Um, I reached the peak in my 20s. I think it's really just saying that like the best is yet to come. That no matter where you are in your life, you can always do better. You can always learn more. You can always find ways that work better than what you've been doing. So I every Monday I have like it's basically like a mindset Mondays. I release an episode. Last week was 4 networking tips for introverts, where I kind of went over a few things that I've learned over the years. Fridays I try to do this every week, but it's like a self-employment update. Hey, I tried meta ads this week. I tried this. These are my results. This is what I got out of it. Here's how you could apply it to your business. And then starting this Wednesday, I'm going to be doing guest episodes. So this Wednesday, well, I'm sure it'll be after this is or before this is recorded, um, but is with a sober coach. So, like looking at your relationship with alcohol, is that what you want to do? Do you want to change it? Next week is with the dynamic aging coach I mentioned earlier. So, how does age affect our progress, the things that we want to do? So, I really just want it to be a way for people to learn from what I've gone through, the things that I've messed up on, or things that have worked for me, and make those decisions for themselves on how they want to move forward.
All right, yeah, thank you so much for sharing.
Hmm.
Yeah, this is basically the interview is coming to an end.
Hmm.
I'd like to thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your incredible story. and not only what works for you, but also basically a personal story that guides you through your life. It's been a pleasure talking with you, and I know our listeners will take away a lot from this conversation. To all of you that are turning in, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with anyone who could benefit from this amazing insights we heard today. Until next time, keep pushing forward in body, being, balance, and business. I wish everybody a good day and hope to see you in the next episode.